Hello, hello, and welcome to Call Your Coven, practical support for nonsensical times. I am so excited to be here today. I'm one of your hosts, B. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm here with your numerology.
And I'm Jeanna. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm here with your astrology.
And I'm Meg. My pronouns are she, they, and I am the tarot reader of the Coven.
Hell yeah. And we're so excited to introduce ourselves and our show to you today. This is an idea that sparked earlier in the spring about bringing magical, spiritual, divinatory, whatever word you want to use, witchy modalities together to have them be in conversation and to have us as your channels, and your practitioners in conversation as well. And so the idea here on Call Your Coven is that we will be speaking numbers, we'll be speaking astrology, we'll be speaking tarot, and really weaving these tools together to see what kind of practical insights we can pull from them. Because I do think a lot of spiritual information can get kind of muddy. And this is a time of life and history in the world where things definitely feel muddy enough. So, yeah, so our hope here is to just pull this all together and offer something really practical for you to listen to.
I am just so excited that we're doing this. It's so wild how, like, the relationships that we all have with each other have grown and how this just really came about organically. Like you just pitched it to us over a meal. Like it's just felt so good the whole time. So I'm just really excited that we're actually like recording our intro episode and we're gonna be out in the world connecting with people.
Yeah, I feel like we reference each other's work so often, and I feel like there's such a vibe of like respect and love and friendship and joy with these relationships, and I think that there's so much overlap in our modalities and the ways that we use them. So I'm really excited to like get into this and be able to visit things on a monthly basis with y'all and see what comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. The two of you are both teachers of mine, and I feel really just psyched and honored to be sharing this space and creating this with the both of you. So thanks for saying yes over brunch.
Well, the
Yeah.
feeling is so mutual. Like
Yeah,
I
it
think
was a
we've said
very
this
gay
in
New
other,
York City brunch. Like
yeah, very gay New York City brunch.
gay
But
server, gay us, everybody's queer, it's
wearing
fabulous.
a Bartlett like sweatshirt, right? It was like a West Wing sweatshirt.
Yes.
Because I had to text like 10 people afterwards. Yeah, very gay brunch,
Incredible.
very West Wing brunch. It was delightful. But yeah, the feeling is so mutual. Be like, I found your work because I was desperate for a queer numerologist to explain numbers to me in a way that didn't annoy me. And when I found your work, I just like immediately fell in love with it and was like, I gotta talk to this person. We gotta be friends. And I think I booked with you immediately. So just to say, I've learned a lot from you as well. And from Gina, obviously. I harass Gina about astrology on a daily basis. So
Meg indulges my daily astrology lectures.
I
And I
love them and I request them.
and I know that I know I've told you this, like not to make this too much of a love fest, but also just like I literally just told you before we started recording, you were the only person who makes like numbers outside of like tarot or astrology. You're the only person who makes them make sense to me. So like it's been revelatory to get to learn from you as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, everybody, this is the perfect way into like a disclaimer about numerology because I do feel like it's the one modality that doesn't get its time to shine a lot on its
Yeah.
own. And it is intrinsic to all these other systems and to just how culturally and societally we understand the world and how the world is structured and made up. But I do think numbers get such a bad rap because of their connection to math. So I'm here to just disclaimer call your coven with the fact that numerology is going to be very accessible here. And I will do the math for you. You don't have to do the math on your own. And also, I had to go to Sylvan Learning Center tutoring to pass high school math. So it's okay. We're all using calculators and taking things one day at a time.
Yep.
100% using
Yeah.
calculators. You should see me playing D&D. It's just embarrassing. I'm like using my fingers. It's like it's not pretty. So
And that's okay. It doesn't
it's
have to
okay.
be. But I'm so excited to be here and to be your resident numerologist here at Call Your Coven. as I've already said, my name is B. My full name is Rebecca Scolnick. So you'll see me out there on the interwebs at B Scolnick, but also at RebeccaSkolnick.com. A little confusing, but I'll answer to whatever at this point. And I'm super excited again to bring numerology and this practice to more of a mainstream, or at least in tandem with other practices like astrology and tarot, which, if you've been on the internet in the last couple of years, the girly pops have found the spiritual modalities. They're out there. Yeah, so numerology really is a two-part practice for me. It's first and foremost the study of the divine language of numbers. So we can really learn how to speak numbers, and we can learn their energies, we can learn their archetypes, we can learn their themes and keywords, and all of these are just entry points with developing a relationship with numbers, which might sound strange if you've only ever seen them in a math context. But this is really about personal application. So that's the other piece of this numerological puzzle, is that we study and then we can apply, and we can do this intuitively as well, apply these knowings and this knowledge to people, places, and events. So just like Jeanna is going to let you know that you have a unique astrological natal chart, everyone also has a unique numerological chart as well. And numerology finds these personal numbers through the birth date, but then also it incorporates name numbers. This can be your birth name or given name. It can be a chosen name. I mean, I think with name numbers, a lot of numerologists tend to go very traditional. And I'm like, hey, it's 2024 and that's boring and transphobic.
Yeah,
So let's
sure.
use whatever name works, you know? And so we can use a lot of pieces of our lives and boil them all down to numbers to distill this personal numerological chart. And then this offers you insights into your life path. So, what are your areas of growth? What is going to be maybe challenging for you along the way? What are going to be some skills, tips, tricks, characteristics that are in your knapsack already that you can use to support you? And again, it's really just looking at kind of the cycles of life. Numerology looks at the building block numbers of 1 through 9. Everything gets distilled to those numbers at first. That's the first step of learning and building a practice. And then we can use this endless cycle of 1 through 9 to really hone us in on like what are the mundane aspects of our daily lives and how can we add a little bit of magic and understanding and nuance to all of that jazz. And specifically when it comes to using numerology here at Call Your Coven, we are going to look in our monthly forecast episodes, which are going to be our tentpole episodes here on the podcast. We're going to look at each of these separate modalities and then weave them together. And so for numerology, we're going to really hone in on 2 numbers. One is the Gregorian calendar numeral of the month itself. And then the second is the calculated number that's at the core of the month in a specific year. And these universal numbers are going to help us to feel into the collective energy. Like, what is the umbrella kind of that we're all walking under for the month itself? And then I'm also going to dish out some personal numbers. You can calculate your personal monthly numbers, and we'll go into all of that later. But I'm going to spotlight some personal numbers so that depending on what month you're in, you'll know what themes or buckets of life might be highlighted. And why you should listen to me, other than the beautiful things that the two of you have said, so thank you, is that I've been studying numerology for almost 15 years now. It is one of the first modalities that I picked up after leaving the church. So I was a little church kid. I took notes. I sat in the front row, and I just absolutely love the community and the spirituality and everything of the church. But when the dogma and the construct of it just became a no-go for me as a high schooler, I really started to look for tools and modalities outside of the church that were going to help me to continue my spiritual relationship with myself and then that whichever I call God. And so tarot and numerology were actually the first 2 that I picked up. And numerology to me it really was the first time that math and numbers started to make sense. Like I expressed before, I had a really horrible relationship with math in high school, and I never felt like I really understood it. But something about linking it to personality, to psychology, to history, to story, all of these good things, that are in the spiritual soup just really made it make sense for me. And so it's been a long process of study. I am indebted to teachers like Pythagoras. My lineage is Pythagorean or Western numerology. Teachers like Christine Delory, Remington Donovan, Sarah Yip, uh, Nova Lee Wilder, who's a beautiful numerologist working today. She works in a slightly different modality than I do. So just know that we're bringing you the same intention, but not always the same information. There aren't a lot of us in the space, but we're out there talking about numbers. And so all of this really culminated a few years ago into a book baby called The Witch's Book of Numbers, Enhance Your Magic with Numerology. And it is out now wherever books are sold, and it really does land in the intersection of witchcraft or spellcraft and numerology. And in some ways, I feel like maybe I don't have anything to say anymore, but the numbers keep going, and so I will keep going.
We
um,
want you to keep going. I
Yes.
love your book. I recommend it to everyone. It's my favorite numerology book to use and to. I was looking around to see if it's literally sitting next to me because it usually is, but it's. I cleared off the desk for recording.
as you
Yeah.
should, clear the space. No, but I love numbers. I love numerology. It is a huge cosmic joke that I use math in my everyday life and work. And so I'm going to be bringing numerology to the Coven. I'm also going to be doing individual episodes that dive deeper into the practice. So if you are looking to start at the 101 level, I'm going to have a whole intro primer episode for you coming. And then as we move forward, we'll go through topics like life path numbers, personal year numbers, maybe even some synastry or compatibility within charts. I am open to hearing from the Coven, which includes you listening in terms of what you want to hear about numerology outside of these monthly forecast episodes. And of course, you can find me online. I'm at RebeccaScolnick.com. I'm at bscolnick on Instagram and I guess Threads. I'm trying to hang out where the cool kids hang out.
Aren't we all?
None of us know,
We
but
don't know.
we're not cool anymore, and it's
I'm
okay.
38. I don't know what's going on. Just doing my best out here.
I've been 80 years old since I was born. So
Hope of that.
I'm trying to do the social media thing, but hang out with me there. I also have a Substack called Swimming in the Soup. That's a little of this, a little of that, all things magical and mundane. And it's always fun to be there. And yeah, I'm mostly just excited to hear from my lovely co-hosts and get jamming on the Coven.
Hey, B, what are your big three and your other
Oh,
stuff? Because I
yeah.
need to know that. And well,
We got to talk about it.
Yes. Okay. My big three in astrology, I am a Cancer sun, Libra moon, Sagittarius rising. I am on a life path of 8 in numerology, which means my birth card is strength or justice, depending on how you read. And I will say that I always feel the strength aspects of my life path for sure. But I've been reading recently, I have a new-ish personal practice with the Gay Marseille deck by Charlie Claire Burgess.
Love it.
And in the Marseille, Justice is the 8th card, and I pull it so regularly, you'd think I never shuffle the damn deck. So it's been interesting. I just actually came out of a really terrible, awful, hard 8 house perfection year. And so I think that card was definitely my ally through health issues, job loss, anything that could have gone wrong absolutely went wrong. But it's been a really nice practice of like recentering in justice as well, and knowing that like the arc is long and that if we're staying rooted in our values, then we can move forward. So yeah, those are mine. Cancer, Libra, Sag, and tons of 8 energy.
fitting that we're starting in September then with all of the 8. of the month. Like you're the expert. You are the expert on all of it.
I'm like, how else can I talk to myself through talking to other people?
Oh my God. I can pick it up.
Yeah.
Am I
Yeah.
picking it up? Is it my turn to
Yeah.
pick it
Yeah.
up?
Tell
All
us about
right,
yourself.
let's
Go.
go. My name's Jeanna Kadlec, she, her. I'm your resident astrologer here at Call Your Coven. Meg is my partner, B is my friend, and I am a Capricorn, Sun and Moon, an Aquarius rising, a life path 5, and that means that my birth card is the Hierophant. And it's very loud. It's just very loud. And I'm so stoked that we're doing this. I feel like this is the podcast I needed when I was first getting into astrology, like through the gateway drug that is tarot, like years ago. Like having a podcast like this would have really helped to further and deepen my practice a little more quickly, I think. And so I'm just, yeah, really stoked to be perpetually doing the work that my younger self needed, whether through books or podcasting or what have you. So if you are completely new to astrology, that is okay. Like B, I am also going to be doing a series of 101 intro solo episodes to like walk you through what are the planets, what are the signs, all of that. But just to like give an overview of how I understand astrology here at the top, because there are so many different astrologies in the world, and there are so many different lineages people can be coming to it through, and sometimes pop astrology mixes and matches some of these in ways that are not helpful. So like I'm gonna endeavor to explain where I'm coming from, my background, my training, my way of thinking in a relatively easy to understand way, but people will let me know. So astrology is essentially the study and observation of the rhythms of the planets and how that impacts us here on Earth. It's not personality typing based on your sun sign. We all have a birth chart, which is just a snapshot of the sky the moment we took our first breath. And so that means that we all have every planet in our birth chart. We all have every sign in our birth chart. Your birth chart is not a list. It is not a list. It is basically a map or a graph, but it's not a list. I feel so strongly about that. But the thing is that all the planets and all the signs are interconnected in our birth charts in really unique patterns, and those planets are in different places in the birth chart that mean different things, which makes you a really beautiful interconnected web of uniqueness. But the really fun thing to my mind, like moving beyond the promise of the natal birth chart, is that the planets keep moving. It's like we have this snapshot of the sky the moment that each of us was born, and then the planets keep going. So what does it mean when they keep going? How does their continued movement actually then impact the expression of our own natal chart and whatnot? The planets keep activating different parts of the chart as they move, as we grow, as we age. And I think that honestly, astrologers are kind of just the weathermen of occult practices. We're just like, hey, there's a 60% chance that you'll send the wrong text to the wrong person today. Clear skies tomorrow, though. Have a good date night. Like, like really all we're doing is giving a forecast that they're based on previous transits, based on previous planetary movements, previous cycles. We're like, well, these things have happened when the planets are doing that. So the odds seem high that they'll happen again. But new things are always emerging. Humanity, we stay the same, but technology changes. Like astrologers thousands of years ago in Greece or in Babylon would never have conceived of how Uranus relates to like artificial intelligence. Like that's an association. So we have this beautiful way that our understanding of the foundational nature of the planets also gets to grow with us as different things occur in our world. But that's also just to say that astrology is the study of the quality of time and how best we can use it. The planets have orbits. They move in cycles that are as short as a month and as long as hundreds of years. And so studying the span of what we know of as human history through the lens of astrology is just really illuminating a lot of the time, because we see these repeated patterns happening during different astrological moments. There's a reason, not to bring up 2020, but like there's a reason that so many astrologers looked at 2020 and were like, this is going to be a very hard year. And that's because the year started in January with a Saturn and Pluto conjunction. And that's when two planets are at the same degree of the same sign. Again, I'll go over that in my intro episode, so like check those out. But Saturn Pluto conjunctions tend to bring about like throughout history, we can see this, that repeatedly they bring about these world defining events like rising dictatorships, like global pandemics. Saturn Pluto moments were also happening like during the rise of HIV/AIDS in the 80s. They were happening as far back as like the onset of the Black Plague. So this is what really interests me about the practice. It's not really like, oh, I can see your secrets in your birth chart. It's more, oh, how are we using this practice for timing, and how are we really making the most of the time we have, and like, not to use the startup word of optimizing, but also how are we optimizing, you know? So astrology it really appeals to control freaks, being totally real. And I am a control freak. And of course, though, being in relationship with the practice is what has actually taught me how to relinquish control and how to move. I don't know if I'm past the need for control. Meg could tell you about that, but like, it's taught me a lot about staying in the present moment, about how even if you can see that certain vibes are coming, as it were, if certain weather is coming, it's like, but what can I do? But what is realistic? But what is reasonable? And also just acknowledging like what's outside my control. And in addition to the fact that I am like a oldest daughter, type A personality, high achiever, blah, 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 and also a super Saturn person, Cap Sun Moon, Aquarius rising, I also grew up in a high control religion, like all of us did. Like I grew up in evangelical Christianity. I was a true believer. Like I wasn't the kid getting dragged to church. I was like, put me in, coach. Like, put me in, which I think all of us were. And that is a very particular kind of devoutness to be exercising at a really young age in life. Like that really does it really does form and inform our relationships to devotion and to spirit, when we are exercising such strict rules so early. And this is all to say, grew up evangelical, very devout, married a man in my early 20s, went to grad school and promptly came out, left the church, divorced my husband. It was a huge, like, dark night of the soul set of years, really. And I felt very lost spiritually because to me, a relationship with Jesus had always been a very real and practical and close thing. And like I could, hear his voice, which is something I wrote about in my book, Heretic, which is a memoir about that experience. I had a number of people, though, including some journalists who were interviewing me, like after the fact, they asked me, like, but did you really hear Jesus's voice? Like, how much, like, they basically asked me how much of my faith had been a projection or a delusion. And the thing that has never sat well with me, even after realizing that evangelical Christianity was like not the one, was that I couldn't go to the atheist end of the spectrum. Like I had had too many experiences as a child, a teenager, a young married woman, where like spirit was just so pronounced and so powerful. And I had really, really powerful moments, and really potent experiences that just made it impossible for me to not believe in something or to not think that there was something else out there, And so I got my first tarot reading shortly after my divorce. I was heartbroken because I'd been in love with my best friend who didn't love me back. A tale as old as time in the queer community. Like, some among us. It's a rite of passage. So that rite of passage basically concluded with a tarot reading, which was a beautiful ceremony, a beautiful ritual to like start to bring closure to that heartbreak. But watching the reader use the cards to tell a story just clicked something inside me. I was like, oh, this makes sense. I get this. My English Lit PhD grad school brain understands what we're doing here. And so I like bought a deck immediately, started teaching myself to read the cards, had a hot fling with doing readings professionally for a minute a few years later. But at the same time, any book of correspondences about the tarot is going to talk about astrology. And so I was gradually being introduced to astrology over that time. And it just was a language that really made sense. And as time went on and I moved more past those dark night of the soul crisis years, tarot really got me through that. like my tarot practice got me through it. But then I was learning about astrology, and people weren't coming to me for tarot as the years went on. They were coming to me for astrology. The opportunities kept opening up. I had a friend, Mecca Woods. Well, I still have, she's still a very dear friend and mentor, an incredible astrologer, incredible author of books about astrology. And she was so encouraging of me and so patient with me as I slowly like inched my way toward what if I got like professional mentorship? What if I did one-on-one training? And eventually I studied one-on-one with Rebecca Gordon at the tail end of my Saturn return. And then what really transitioned me into doing astrology professionally was that I occupied a very strange space in New York in the late 2010s, early 2020s, which was that I had a marketing background in tech startups, and I was a writer, and I was a trained astrologer. So astrology apps started knocking on my door pretty much immediately and were very keen to hire me. And so I worked at Sanctuary. I was the first director of content at the CHANI app before, leaving to work on my book and my own business. And at this point, my specialty and what I'm known for is essentially spiritual direction for creatives, especially writers and also other artists. I've been profiled for my work as an astrologer in the New York Times, which is honestly really wild to me. And like, I still have my fair share of imposter syndrome and uncertainty because I feel like I straddle the occult and literary worlds and without entirely belonging to either one. You know what I mean? So that's sort of something that I think that I'll be wrestling with for my entire career. But I am so excited to be doing this podcast. For forecasts, I'm going to be mostly focusing on the lunations and zodiacal seasons, along with any major planetary ingresses. An ingress is when a planet changes signs. So like Mars moving into Cancer that we talk about in the forecast, that's an ingress. In my solo episodes, I'll be getting more technical with both 101 stuff as well as topical episodes that explain eclipses, Mercury retrograde, presidential astrology, because that's a thing that we have to think about. So yeah, I've talked forever, but that's me.
I really appreciate what you said about straddling the line. I didn't say this, but I went to school for acting. I am also a writer. I'm working on fiction and nonfiction projects alike. I had a 10-year career in production where I worked for brands like Today Tix, Nike, W Magazine at Condé Nast, like Nickelodeon. So I think honestly, the more we have, and I know Meg will say what other worlds they have lived in, but I think all of that just brings color and understanding to these practices and to these modalities. And so, yes, to straddling, but I also just think that strengthens us as people to be involved in a lot of different things. And then we're also bringing all of those perspectives and experiences to now these spiritual tools as well.
That's a
Yeah.
beautiful way of putting it, B.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and I totally there with you. Like imposter syndrome is so real. And I think a lot of the ways that I have like made money, so to speak, or like the different careers that I've juggled throughout the years as a freelance event and food photographer, as like a restaurant success person working directly with restaurants for startups, as someone who did event production as a stage manager and worked on like large scale food events. I'm a lot of the skills that I developed, even though I have a master's degree, a lot of those skills were developed like on the ground without mentorships or certifications. It was just like me figuring out along the way. And I think that while that's worked pretty well for me and is a good learning style for me, it brings up a lot of imposter syndrome because I didn't like mentor with someone in the tarot world for years and years before I started reading professionally, and I'm completely self-taught as a photographer. I took one photography class after I'd already been working as a photographer for a few years so that I could put something on my resume. So just to say like, yeah, I think it's really interesting to think about how we all came to these modalities, and what that brings up for us as individuals. But anyway,
Oh,
I'll
can
actually,
can I jump in really fast before you
yeah,
start, Meg? Because I just realized that I introduced astrology being like there are so many of them, and I'll tell you which one I do, and then I super didn't tell you all which one I
say
do.
it to us.
It's important. So I use, and this is going to be a little technical, but if you know, you know. I use a tropical zodiac. I use a whole sign house system. Basically, my grounding is in, for lack of a better geographic word, Western astrology, just to differentiate it from Jyotish out of India, and then of course Chinese astrology, among others. And the key thing though is that I have a really strong grounding and preference in Hellenistic astrology. So like here you'll hear me talk about like how, you know, the outer planets that have been discovered much later, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, like I don't assign rulership to those things, which we can get into more in the 101 episodes. I use a fair bit of modern in terms of certain timing techniques, but like I'm mostly working in Hellenistic. Okay, I'm done. That's it.
All good. That's important.
Yeah.
You got to get everything in here. All right. I'll read my little spiel now. My name is Meg as well. On the interwebs, my name is my name because I worked as a freelance photographer for more than a decade and a freelance writer as well. But I'm primarily known as 3 a.m. Tarot on Instagram and the social media accounts where I'm like rattling around trying to figure out what I'm doing. My pronouns are she, they. And although all of us have robust tarot practices, I'm very honored to be the resident tarot reader of the Coven and to serve in that particular way. So my big three are I'm a Gemini rising, I'm a Leo moon, and I'm a Scorpio sun, which is so easy and fun to navigate. I have a great time. And my life path is 11. So like I'm glad you mentioned like the whole strength justice situation because I'm on the other side of that. Like my
Oh,
birth
yes.
card could be either. But I typically feel more aligned with 11 as justice rather than strength because to me justice feels like it's like kind of straddling that line between ideals and impacts, like what we want the world to look like versus what it actually looks like, which to me feels very 11y. and and I like distilling that down to 2 as well. I'm also born in November, so I've got 11s are big for me as well. So that's super fun. So tarot as a modality, thinking about tarot in contrast to numerology and astrology, is significantly younger. And so I think that it's important to recognize that and just note that tarot is coming in as a physical tool first, rather than a way of thinking or like pattern recognition or analyzing information. There's been a lot of stuff put on tarot throughout the centuries, from Jungian archetypes to shadow work to astrological and numerological correspondences to like Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah to like Egyptian like mythology to like there's so much that's gotten layered on top of tarot throughout the centuries. And that can be really cool and totally fine to use, but you also don't have to know those things. And I feel like that's something that I constantly say in my work is that you don't have to have 20 correspondence tables memorized and a million different keywords memorized in order to use tarot. But what I want to say and stress here is that while you can absolutely use tarot cards in really whatever way you want to, whatever way feels good for you, people use them for intuitive work, for creative work, for personal discovery, for collective joy and support, for spiritual practice, and of course, what they're most often first thought of as a divination tool. There's also so many correspondences that we can use, which makes tarot a really beautiful companion for astrology and for numerology. So there are cards that have been assigned to different planets, different zodiacal signs, as well as decans, which I'm not even going to talk about because I barely understand them myself and I don't work with them. Like, let's be real. But also tarot inherently has numbers built into the structure of them. So I think that the most helpful correspondences and the ones that are most commonly seen, at least in the worlds that I operate in for tarot, are numerology and astrology for tarot. So when we're talking about tarot, just to like boil it down to the basics, we're always talking about a system of cards that is built with 78 cards, right? And it's going to have 5 different suits, 4 minor arcana suits of 14 cards each, which are 10 numbered cards, plus 4 court cards. There's 16 court cards. They're people. They confuse everybody. I'll do an episode about it. It's going to be fine. I'll hold your hand. We'll talk through it. Don't stress about the court cards. They're archetypes. They're minor arcana archetypes. We're all going to make it. But then there's also the major arcana. I spend so much time talking about court cards. I feel like I'm always talking people off the ledge on court cards. Anyway, But the fifth suit, which makes tarot in a lot of ways, is the major arcana, which are 22 cards that are often referred to as the Fool's Journey. And these include the 22 cards that famously scare people. So we'll talk about those as well. In my Tarot 101 episode, I will talk you through the structure more than that, and I'll give you a little bit more of a baseline on how the cards work and how they're laid out. I'll also give you a very basic history of it, but I'm going to be very honest. I don't like getting too in the weeds with tarot history. And part of that is because tarot history is convoluted. It has literal like liars in it, like people who just kind of made stuff up and then published it and said it was true without really any verifiable facts. There's a lot of blurriness and messiness and stickiness and ego, and a lot gets missing or left out, including like the entire history and contribution of the Romani people. So whenever I read a history of the tarot, I always learn something new, and I also always see something that contradicts something else I've read. So I try not to go on record too much with too much tarot history beyond what I think is important to know that is provable, because it always feels like it's wrong. And I don't really want to be on record in 30 places saying different versions of tarot history as I continue to learn more. But I think what's important to know is that tarot's history is messy. And I'll tell you what I can in the 101 episode. And also we'll constantly be recommending other resources that you should check out if you want to learn about tarot. But if you're new to tarot and you want to learn more, I will say that one of the main things I'm doing right now is running a tarot podcast. It's called Card Talk. They're all mini episodes, 15 to 20 minutes. It's totally free to access. And while I will be creating plenty of 101 content here as well in how it intersects with numerology and astrology, if you're like really hyped to learn tarot and you want to dive straight into that, you can check that out because I'm going to cover some other things there as well. So to talk about myself, which is famously my favorite thing to do.
Famously, your favorite thing.
Famously, I love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Help me. Okay. I was raised, I, like my lovely co-host, was also raised in the evangelical church, specifically Baptist, Calvinist, and fundamentalist. I had multiple family members who were ministers and missionaries going back multiple generations. My parents helped to plant a Baptist church. They're still there. And my dad preached and was the music director. And so I was a very visible and restricted, honestly, eldest daughter. I mean, I use she, they pronouns now, but I was an eldest daughter. I was raised as an eldest daughter. And I had a lot of expectations on me to serve as a spiritual leader. Basically, as soon as I was old enough to lead prayer, I was expected to lead prayer, lead Bible studies, be the model Christian kid. Which sucked, honestly. It was a pretty rough time for me, especially because I was also struggling with like untreated depression and hiding my queerness and wasn't even thinking about gender, like just very frustrated with the conservative politics that I was seeing. And there was just a lot going on that didn't feel safe. And so again, like my lovely co-hosts, I started to slowly pull away from the church. I probably stayed longer than I should have, in a healthy way for myself, but by my mid-20s I was really starting to pull back, and by my Saturn return I was pretty out. So in 2016, by the time I'd really fully left the church, I was sort of floundering. I was craving spiritual practice. I missed being in spiritual community, and I also just missed feeling connected to literally anything. I was just kind of floating around in a fog of depression, and I didn't know how to do anything. So I initially picked up a tarot deck without really any knowledge of it. I'd never had a reading. I barely knew what the thing was, but it felt like it might help me stay grounded in my faith separate from the church. And it turned out that that wasn't what I actually needed at all. But tarot really gave me permission to both not be good at something, because I was terrible at reading tarot when I started. I was so confused by it. I didn't get it. I quit like 3 different times. It's fine. But tarot also really gave me permission to leave a lot of those religious beliefs and practices behind and really start to establish frameworks and structures for myself that gave me the kind of freedom that I'd actually always been craving, and really let me build a spiritual journey and go through a spiritual transformation on my own in a way that felt like safe and a lot more authentic than what I'd been raised with. So for me, tarot has been a fantastic, healthy, and honestly necessary way for me to learn more about who I am and who I want to be in the world. It's a spiritual tool for me, but it's also a really practical tool for transformation, for journaling, for reflection, and for connecting with other people, which is one of my favorite ways to use it, is collaborative readings, is offering readings to other people, is serving as a teacher, and just working in different ways to help us all discover more about this tool together.
It's partly how we met.
It is partly how we met. Yeah, we met at a like specific meetup at Autostraddle, actually, which is what I'm about to talk about. So
Sorry,
yeah, tarot is
not to move you, babe.
no, I'm right there. Like, yeah, tarot is like pretty much everyone in my life right now, like that's community, that's like professional community or like personal friends and chosen family. I met because of my tarot work. I became more visible in my tarot work. It really gave me the courage to make big life changes that were good for me ultimately. And it also just helped me learn more about the kind of life I wanted to live and the ways that I wanted to move through the world. And I think when we're able to live in our authenticity, we meet people who want to be in that with us, and that's really how I've kind of rebuilt my life in a lot of ways. So. I will say that I have had the profound privilege to use tarot directly professionally with both astrology in terms of writing tarotscopes for Autostraddle for almost 5 years. And I've also used tarot with numerology directly, both in my own personal practice and teaching it in different ways. Both of those practices and both of these modalities have really helped me understand how to work with the cards in different ways, which is just a really cool thing given this project. Um, Also, I will say there are different types of tarot cards and tarot structures and tarot philosophies. The shorthand for what I do is read tarot in a Marseille style, which is really a focus on using the elements and numbers in each tarot card to build definitions rather than kind of relying on specific keywords that have been generated and sort of passed along through various figures in history. Marseille is really about digging into the magic of correspondences, specifically numerological and elemental correspondences. So again, we're getting the astrology and the numerology baked right in. So you will definitely hear me refer to numbers and elements as we're going through the forecast and also in my 101 episodes. And I'm almost done. But tarot's a vibe, right? Like we've got these really gorgeous, like precise transits for planets and calculations with the numbers. Tarot's like, hey babe, what do you want to talk about? So because of that, what I'm going to be doing in these forecasts is a little bit more of a vibe as well to kind of meet you there and talk through ways that we can really practically show up for ourselves and for each other in community throughout each month. So I'm going to pull us 3 cards for every forecast, and we'll talk about practical insights and ways that you can work with those cards, both in a very general, broad sense, but also we'll go through the different buckets. So I'll explain how those cards can talk to you about your finances and your health and your relationships. I will always pull a theme card that will be kind of our big, broad, happy card for the month. But then I'll pull 2 different cards as well, truth and dare. So we're going to talk through these as like internal challenges and insights, as well as external risks to take or things that we can try out. I think that's it. I think I said all the things. Did I miss anything?
No, I just love how many through lines we all have, which is like why we're all in relationship with each other in the first place. But
Yeah.
like, I don't know. I know that we're also talking so much about practical advice for these modalities and that that's really what we're primarily offering. But I think we've all also had such rich spiritual journeys in our lives and all have a lot to say about like spirituality and faith vis-a-vis religion, vis-a-vis witchcraft. Like I think that there's just so much that we're all going to be able to dive into here. And I'm really, really excited by that.
Yeah, me too. I think these modalities have so much to say to each other. I think they can offer so much support to one another. And I think even when inevitably, like, we might find some tension or contradiction between like a transit versus a number versus a card, there's so much to dig into because I love the friction. I like figuring out like what's creating that heat and that tension and unpacking what's inside of it. So I'm really excited to do this with y'all. I think there's just going to be so much cool stuff that we find in here.
Same, absolutely. And I think that the things that we all well, that in our childhood, maybe we were looking to religion for, I think all of us have been through our own journeys of trying to mirror that in our
Mhm.
spiritual modalities, and then going through the journey of like, how do we deconstruct that? And how do we take these core elements of community, relationship,
Mhm.
spirituality, connection, that are intrinsic to the human experience, but also really desired in order to get us from one day to the next. We've all done our own work in terms of deconstructing our practices in so many ways, whether that's anti-capitalist, anti-racist, decolonializing things, looking at histories and saying, okay, this is where things get convoluted, or this is where straight up bullshit comes in. I mean, there's a lot of that in a numerology practice. I can do episodes about numerologists as faulty channels. Um, But
Yeah.
I do think we're all committed to our own work and our own practices and really coming together in terms of our core values and our core tenets and what we love and want to work with.
Yeah.
So, and
I
we're all
think
fire Mercuries.
Also,
yeah, and we're all fire Mercuries. Ugh. But no, but I think too, like one thing, not to keep like talking about how much I appreciate this space and both of you, but like we're all also lifelong learners. Like none of us is coming at this from the position. Like obviously we have expertise and we know that. Like there are literal books that have been written by each of us about various like we are experts, but we're not occupying a guru mentality that like we are the only place you should get information. Like we talk about this so much in the September forecast. Like we're encouraging and almost pushing discernment and questioning and skepticism on to everyone who listens to this. We're like, no, use your own discernment, use your own wisdom, check your sources, review our sources, like find your citations, like and I know that in this field, like one of the issues, even that I think came up when we were all talking about it, was like the line between personal gnosis vis-a-vis being able to source information. And that is such a fine line, like such a fine point to thread, that I think I do it differently every single day. But we all don't, yeah. I'll just say that like none of us is coming at this from like an on high place, which is why that I can work with both of you because we're all I think there's just a tremendous like desire to grow and learn from other sources and other people and other practitioners. Like, yeah,
yeah.
that's it.
Yeah,
I
I'm
know.
pretty sure I say in the September forecast, don't listen to me.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's not entirely like sure, but also no, because like we should listen about a lot of things.
It's a yes and.
Yeah.
Yes,
An
yes.
improv approach to spirituality.
You love to see it.
Isn't that all Twitter's doing any day? Like,
Yes. 100%.
Honestly. No, but I also think that brings us full circle to the idea of call your coven, that the coven is us, the three of us, and how we are meeting and what we are providing. But the coven is also you, the listener, and whatever community is built in this space. And all three of us are community builders in our own ways, both in life and in business. And I am really excited about that aspect of it too. I think every numerologist, every astrologer, and every tarot reader is going to bring something different to the space, just like every writer, every artist, or every mind is unique. And that's really thrilling to me to see how this is going to grow. And we're definitely open to feedback.
Mhm.
So just to wrap us up for today and throw you into what we're offering. Our structure here is going to be a little loose and flexible as we get going. We're definitely open to hearing what works for you, what maybe doesn't work for you in nice ways that don't make us feel bad about ourselves, and and also what you would like to see more of. So for every month, we're going to bring you a monthly forecast at the top of the month that will serve as everything that you'll need to get you through the day to day, and then some. And then we are going to offer individual episodes, again, like we've introed here today, about our modalities, take you a little deeper if you're interested in learning these practices from the people that know and use them. And then, yeah, we'll see what else comes up. So
yeah.
for today, please like, subscribe, comment, rate, review on the platform of your choice, and let us know that you are at the very least excited to join the coven. And then you can find us online. We're on Instagram at Call Your Coven. We have a website, callyourcoven.com. And then you can also find all of us individually at our own platforms. We will put this all in the show notes, so it's very easy to find us all. And yeah, then go check out September and see what the month has in store for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And let us know what you think because we definitely want to connect with you. We want to keep learning and growing and building something really amazing together. So,
Leave a message.
Bye.